Changanya maji, maharagwe na mahindi, rusha yote kwa moto na uchemshe kamili. Hidheri toa alafu unyunyuzie kachumbi, kisha sunda kwa jua ndivyo isipatane nayo vumbi. Za GMPs, Githeri Media Podcast. GMPs, Young Toro on a broadcast. GMPs, Githeri Media Podcast. GMPs, Young Toro on a broadcast. Hey, have we laugh? Githeri Media Podcast. Coming live to your speakers. Young Toro eye picker. Skizzer.
What's up, people? Welcome to the podcast. This is for a new month. The new guest for a new month. The year 2025. We have Peter Amuhaya in the building.
Whoop, 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 whoop.
What's up, Peter, man?
Nyaja Young Toro, I'm happy to be here.
Hey, welcome. They don't want us to do this, but you know what? We're doing this anyway. Okay, Uliza, who is they? I don't know who they are, but they, whoever they are, they. Anyway, thank you for coming on the podcast. So that's it. Matters education. Peter, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. You know, I've always been a fan of your podcast. I try to share. I try to get your message out there, what you're doing, and yeah, I'm excited for looking for this conversation.
Yes, sir.
So yeah,
much appreciated, man.
Happy new month.
Happy new month. Yeah, it is Saturday when this is recording, but it might drop tomorrow. Hopefully, yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, happy new month. Yeah, it is March. In America, we call it March Madness, and this is when colleges go toe to toe. So that's the closest I can bring this to the topic because March Madness, basketball, colleges are playing against each other, best of the best. Akina Duke, Akina Kentucky, all of them. But yeah, for all those who don't know, Peter Muhaya is a teacher by profession, and today we want to talk matters education. If I'm not, before I start going on a tangent, Mr. Peter Muhaya, why did you choose to get into the teaching profession? Because like yesterday, there's this podcast I've been listening to, and there's a guy called Deante Kyle. And I was listening to the podcast and he was talking about the memories he had from school. So he's a black guy and he was saying he has a memory. The only memory he has of teachers is black teachers, teachers who he could relate to. Like there's an incident they had in class and it was two guys. I mean, there's this girl and a guy. So this girl had a crush on the guy. But this girl used to wear like I think the clothes za brother yake because they were poor, so the only thing she could wear is hand-me-downs from the brothers. So one time they had an incident in class, and unfortunately the guy didn't know this girl liked him. And wakanza, there's exchange of words, kidogo they started fighting. So apparently the teacher didn't even make a scene. She just alichukua the nini za write ups nini. She started just filling the write ups nini. The students broke out the fight. So Umse Kwake, he was saying he appreciated that if it was a teacher who did not relate to them, she would have called security and called this and this. So his best memory is having a teacher, a science teacher actually, a science teacher who was like them, spoke like them. So to me, it's like, so it made me think, how much of an effect do we? Because I said to myself, and I mean, this is a guy in America, so I mean, racial disparity, like everything is racial. But me remembering me being in school, I don't think there's that thing that usually stood out for me, saying I relate to this teacher because X, Y, Z or tribe or. So why did you go into teaching? What was the how can I say this? Yeah, what was the appeal for you?
I think part of it is like maybe connected to that story, because education for a lot of people is a book, a textbook, pencil and paper, but education is also shaping a young person's mind.
True.
So the story about that guy and how he remembers that experience with that teacher,
Mm-hmm.
um, the education helps young people think beyond the classroom, because when they get out of school, they'll
Mm-hmm.
find themselves in so many different situations, and they have to adapt to those situations. They have to find ways to maybe find compromise, find ways. Maybe there are moments where they have to stick to their guns, maybe be leaders,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's one of the reasons that got me into education. But it all goes way back when I was a kid,
Mm-hmm.
because in um, my family is full of teachers, educators.
Oh, okay,
Both
okay,
of my
okay.
parents,
Mm-hmm.
at one time, my dad was a teacher, but then he went into software engineering. My
Mm-hmm.
mom was the one that stayed in education, so there was a lot of influence, like learning and being in education. And then my sisters are professors, and so there was
Mm-hmm. Oh,
always that
nice.
family like influence behind me thinking about going into education. And so when I got to college, when I got to the university,
Mm-hmm.
I had two options after I graduated with my master's degree. I could
Mm-hmm.
stay, I could have stayed at the university level, or I could have
Mm-hmm.
gone into like middle school and high school. Um, so the first opportunity that came up, I got a job, was
Mm-hmm.
to work in Virginia at a high
Mm-hmm.
school. I had never taught before. The only teaching
Mm-hmm.
experience that I had was being a teaching assistant. Uh,
At the university, obviously.
exactly. And now
Mm-hmm.
I had to now go to a high school where it's a whole different ball game, and so I I tried it, I loved it,
Mm-hmm.
and I realized, you know what, I could actually make a career out of this, because
Oh,
it
nice.
falls in line with my principles of, education is not just teaching someone, what's in the textbook, but it's also imparting values. And so
Mm-hmm.
for me, that's why I got into education.
So
Um,
was there? I was wondering because I remember this is way off topic, but growing up, there's kids like we went to school with kids of any kids who their parents were teaching the same school,
yeah.
and I'm wondering how much pressure as like as being the kid who your mom or your dad is a teacher here. How
Uh-huh.
much pressure does that put on you, or do you not realize that at that moment? Because when you're in that moment, your parent, one of your parents, or even both of your parents, you said they were teachers. How much
Yeah.
pressure did that put on you in your academic life, or you didn't feel any pressure to perform academically?
Fortunately,
Mm-hmm.
neither of my parents, I didn't attend, like, we didn't go, they did not work at the same school where I attended. That was a good
Ah,
thing.
that's a plus.
That's a plus. But I do empathize with the students who always like who attend the same school with their parents, um, and I can only imagine. I think there is some type of pressure,
Mm-hmm.
because I remember a few years ago, I had this student whose parent was one of the principals, and if anything bad happened,
Mm-hmm.
and let's say it was revealed, oh, this is the person that did it, everybody would look at that student
They'd be
like you're the snitch.
huh? Yeah. So
Exactly.
there's a lot of pressure on them.
There was a
I
lot
mean,
of
it's
pressure.
yeah,
They have to balance, because kids, every child has some type of ideal. So
right.
maybe this kid wants to be a good kid, but
Mm-hmm.
then they also have to balance, but I want to have friends. So how much, what do you sacrifice? Like, do you know
Man, I because I can imagine like especially being in high school and you're one of your one of your parents is then in need, that'd be hectic. But yeah, I
Hectic.
was just thinking like, yeah, me, because my yeah, I
Hmm.
was fortunate enough
Hmm.
that none of my I mean, my uncle was a teacher, but he taught in a
Hmm.
different school. So that helped. But because he would bring me tests from his school.
Hmm.
He'd be like, "Oh, Shikai, you use this to study." So now I'd say, "Oh, this is easy." I'm like,
The,
"Oh, you guys' tests are easier than ours," stuff like that.
yeah,
But
there are
yeah, so
pluses. There are definitely
there's
pluses.
pluses. Yeah.
And I think having somebody on the inside,
Hmm.
who can give you some type of info on how things work, because as a student you only have one perspective
Right.
as a student.
Hmm.
But if you have an uncle, or maybe even your mom or your dad is a teacher, they can give you a perspective from a
Yeah, they
teacher's
kind
point
of
of view.
right.
Yeah, because
Hmm.
kids, they'll make most decisions in their interest. I'm
Right.
gonna make this decision because I don't want to be the snitch in the classroom, or I
Yeah,
don't want
I
to
want to
be
be the cool guy.
I want to be the cool guy. But then,
Yeah.
your dad's gonna sit you down and be like, hey, if you made this decision, it might
Hmm.
be like a good decision in the moment, but you got to think about the long-term consequences.
True.
And so there are those pluses. But kind of, maybe I just thought of something, when you asked why education, maybe this might be sort of selfish reasons, but this is backed up by science.
Hmm.
Um, you know, when I was looking at careers, I
Hmm.
had to figure out what would lead me into long-term happiness. You don't want to be stuck in a
Oh,
job where
it feels like a dead end.
exactly it feels
Yeah.
like work. You ever heard of that phrase, like, if you enjoy what you do or you're
Yeah.
doing, it doesn't feel
You.
like work?
Yeah. You'll never work a day in your life. Something like that.
Exactly, exactly. And so when I was looking at all those options, I came across, I don't know, it was a book or somebody said something like, science has shown that there are actually three main factors
Hmm.
that lead to long-term uh,
Happiness.
happiness in employment, and none of them involves money.
It's just the fulfillment of what you're doing.
Exactly. So the first one
Hmm.
is independence. So if you're gonna get a job and you want to be happy, you want to have a sense of, I'm in control. I'm the
True.
one who's making decisions. I mean, you
Hmm.
can have, everybody needs a supervisor, you need like a manager, but you don't want a manager that's overbearing, that's breathing down your neck. You want
Hmm.
some level of independence. So
Right.
teaching, being in education, gives you some level of independence, because I get to make my lesson plans. When I'm in the classroom, I can control how fast or slow we go.
Hmm.
There's a lot of independence in there. Second factor is growth. So a lot of people, wherever you're working, you want to feel like you have room for advancement. You don't want
Hmm.
to be stuck
It's like in the same. Yeah.
same thing, doing the same job every day, Monday through. Some people are happy with that. I mean, no, let me say, some people
Hmm.
are comfortable with that, but I don't think long term it gives them happiness. And so people want to feel like you can advance, become a manager, regional manager, maybe CEO, something like that,
Yeah. Moving up the ranks. Yeah.
moving up the ranks, and every
Hmm.
day maybe there's a new challenge. So
True.
education provides that. It provides a challenge where you can grow professionally. And then the last factor is a higher purpose. So higher purpose, not in the sense like, there's like some divine purpose, but
Hmm.
you feel like that the goal of your job is beyond your personal benefit or something like that. Like, there's a social benefit
Mm.
to it. And
So
so when
this
I,
is yeah. It is
yeah,
beyond you. Like this is bigger than you.
it's bigger than me. I
Yeah.
mean, whenever I think about my job,
Hmm.
I'm thinking about raising the next generation, because you and
True.
I, we're not
Hmm.
going to be on this earth forever.
No.
Your child is going to grow up. They're going to have to take care of you when you're old. They're going to have
Hmm.
to pay taxes. They're going to possibly defend the country that you live in one day.
Right.
And you want to give them the tools
Yeah. You
to
have
be
to
ready.
equip him. True.
So those three factors, that science has already done the homework. It says those are the three main factors that lead to long-term work happiness. And so when I looked at education, I was like, you know what, this is a good fit for me. So if you're ever having a conversation with someone, or maybe somebody's like, I don't know what I want to do in life, like those three factors can really help someone figure out what do you want to do in life.
True, and because you've said that, and I've thought, I'm yet to find a teacher that was very discontent.
Mm-hmm.
Teachers are usually, even like when I go to my daughter's school, the
Yeah.
teacher seems awfully happy. She's happy with
Yeah.
what she's doing. She's excited to talk about, oh, your child is doing this and that, and this is what they need to. They're
Absolutely.
very, yeah. I've never seen a teacher who's like, yeah. So now they're doing it begrudgingly, like they do, and I think that's usually the conversation, especially when they say teachers are underpaid,
Mm-hmm.
and yet they still do it. They still
Yeah.
keep doing it, and so
The
it's yeah,
motivation isn't money. The motivation, like primarily, the motivation isn't money. Money is a factor,
yeah,
but nobody gets into teaching like, I
teaching
want to
because of
be a
money.
millionaire, you know, I want to own a
Yeah,
mansion and all of that stuff. No.
man. Okay. I want us, I want us to at least to switch gears a little bit, so and
Uh-huh.
say, I mean, how do you think? I was even trying to look it up, and now it's now with the AI, it's even showing me ancient times, Middle Ages.
Uh-huh.
But I was wondering, how do you think education has changed from back then to how it is currently? Because I know, like in Kenya,
Mhm.
I'm a product of 844,
Yeah.
8 years in primary, 4 in high
Uh-huh.
school, 4 in college. But now I know in Kenya it's changed. We're yet to
Right.
see how if it's good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
But I know, yeah. I mean, you teach. I'm
Mm-hmm.
guessing you teach in a different country. So how
How's it
what are the
changed?
different systems that you've seen? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and how does there pros or cons or because especially now that especially you're teaching like now I'm learning a new like my daughter it's a new country.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't go through the education system other than college, so I'm
Mm-hmm.
also learning. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
wondering to compare to what I know because I knew 844. That's what I went through, so that's all I know.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents also, I think my parents were the pioneers were 844. Then I went to 844. Then my younger brother now, 15-year difference. He's going through, what is it called? The Kenyan system right now.
The CBC.
CBC.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So I'd
It,
like to see, like, have you done like an evaluation to see, like, what are how's one outweighing the other? Are there any
right.
pros or cons of,
I've had conversations with some friends. One of my nephews is a teacher right now, CBC. My nephew went through, I think, 844, and then now he's amongst like the first batch of teachers being trained to implement CBC. So he has he has his opinions about it,
yeah.
but
Are they positive or negative?
so far it's negative. Unfortunately, so far
Oh,
it's
he thinks it's
negative.
not okay.
But I think
Okay.
that it's negative. I'll just briefly mention this before I kind of maybe give an overview, sort of where we came from and sort of where we are right now, education generally
Okay.
speaking. But I think it's negative right now because it's a new system. Like nobody sort of has some type of reference to say whether this is good or this is bad. Like we can only compare it to 844. That's it. But
True.
we do not have another CBC that we can compare it to. And so I think that's why there's a lot. And plus, the resources are not there, like textbooks, classrooms, uh, and so there's so many missing pieces, or the pieces are there, but you have to fit them. We have to kind of fit them first, and then after like 4 years, this is what I told my nephew. I think in about 4 years, that's when we will have figured out, okay, we're moving in the right direction. So whoever
Right.
is in the CBC right now, the next 5 years, they are basically being tested. Like trial and error.
They're trying to figure it out. They're just working out the kinks and yeah.
Exactly,
So by
exactly.
the time it's streamlined, it might be a couple. Ni kama vile how
Uh-huh.
844 started and people are like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
we're trying to figure this thing out. Then by the time it got to us, it was
Mm-hmm.
almost perfected and it was,
Exactly.
yeah, well-oiled machine now. Okay, I see what you're
Exactly.
saying.
And I think huge changes, even like let's say when Obamacare started out, they
Mm-hmm.
had predicted that the first year premiums would go up,
Right.
because the system is now taking on more people who did not have insurance before, and so for the system to calibrate itself to find some type of balance,
You have
the
to give it
prices,
time.
yeah. So the first 2 years, I could be wrong, but I think it was like the first 2 years, premiums were high, but then slowly they started to drop and drop and drop. And so I think the same thing is true with the Kenyan education.
Okay.
But sort of going back a little bit, education back in the day, it was all, I think, um, meant it was like a pipeline. Like we teach you, you move from school, and then you go
You go
into
up.
industry, workplace. That sort of was the streamline. And so if you look at like the old classrooms back in the day, kids were seated in rows. And so it was like a factory mindset. And so some people came along, educators, psychologists, they were like, no, we got to rethink this, because not life is not linear the way we're trying to prepare these kids. And so we decided, okay, we're going to try to get kids to think more about collaboration. So if you maybe walk into your daughter's classroom, I don't know, maybe if it's in elementary, you'll realize they're seated in circles, or maybe they're
Like
seated.
there's like a table. They sit in like a.
Exactly. So the mindset now is no
Let's work
longer,
together.
yeah. We want to build, we want to incorporate not only learning the content, like we want to learn science, math, but also want to incorporate life skills like teamwork, other soft skills like problem solving, how to deal with disagreements. So you'll see like the classroom structure is now changing. And so in addition to that, depending on the age of the child, there's even an additional teacher in the classroom. Before, it was just one teacher with like 25 kids, or
Okay.
depending on which country you're in, but at least 25 kids in the classroom.
At
Right?
least, yes.
At least 25. 25 is now like the optimal number according to research. If
Oh,
you
that's
have
the ratio. One teacher to 25 kids.
25 kids, yeah. A
Okay.
teacher could comfortably handle 25 kids, be able to call on each kid, attend to a problem. 25 is not too many, and it's not too few. You don't want a
Right.
classroom with like 5 students.
Yeah, then yeah, it's itakuwa yeah. I remember I was used to be almost 40, 50 people in a class.
Yeah, that's huge. That's a huge
Man.
classroom. Like that, there are kids, I'm sure when you were a student, kids that were never called upon. Like ilikuwa the first, maybe the first two rows. uh, I don't know how your primary school was, but in my primary school, we were arranged according to your grade. So like the
Well,
students who had the
performance, yeah.
performance, the highest performing students were in the first
Front.
rows.
Yeah.
The lowest performing students
In the
in the
back.
back row.
Backbenchers.
Backbenchers. Wale, the forgotten ones.
Yeah.
Like how we have the forgotten like we have the forgotten students. And then at the end of the semester, little Johnny in the back, somebody wonders, why are you failing every year? Well, partly it has to do with the way you arrange the classroom. So nowadays, the arrangement, like it's all mixed up. So anyway, I think the evolution has moved from like lines to maybe like small groups. There's a lot of group work. There's an extra teacher for support.
For support, yeah.
And even class, the duration of classes has been reduced. Some classes, I think right now it's like maybe 40 to 50 minutes. Do you remember like the double lessons? Did you ever
Man. Afternoon, a time like this, makula ugali, and then you
Ugali.
had double chem ama double math. I'm like, Lord help us, because that is sleeping through. And now the teacher is wondering why, and
Why
they
you
hated
sleep?
it. And they hated it, so they would try to change it. But yeah, man, double math after double chem, any science
Uh-huh.
that was after lunch, yeah, that was
No,
gone.
that was gone. That's a whole lesson lost.
Yeah,
I
because now the
mean,
teacher is just wasting time cracking
absolutely.
jokes to try to keep you awake.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Man, yeah,
Like,
that was.
the performing students, they'll always be okay, whether it's a double
Mm-hmm,
lesson, one lesson. But as an educator, you
mm-hmm.
want to think beyond just the top students. You want to think
Right.
about, okay, young Toro, he's an average student, or maybe he's a low performing student.
Mm-hmm.
What can I do to the schedule, to try and maintain his attention? So there's been lots of changes over the years. Now with CBC, what I
Mm-hmm.
saw was CBC is trying to um, get students
Mm-hmm.
or schools to focus on the content rather
Mm-hmm.
than the grade,
Grade.
because
Because I remember, yeah, people used to choose schools according to the grade. I want to go to
exactly.
Alliance because I'm an A student.
Hmm.
Mm.
And there's a role for grades. We're not saying grades are bad, but then
Mm-hmm.
when you look at the performance, most students maybe are, or there's a huge group of students who get D's and C's. Like, they're not going to go to university.
Right.
Majority of students do not qualify to get into a Kenyan university. And so, in addition, teachers were teaching to the test. So,
To
like,
pass the test.
just to pass the test. And that's not really helpful, because many years later, somebody's going to ask you, I don't know if you remember learning about the process for producing sulfur. I think it was like Form 3 chemistry or something, or Form 2 chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
There was a long process. I remember that in the textbook, and we had to memorize that. Now, if you ask me what was the purpose of knowing that, I honestly don't know. But we had to learn it for the test. And so,
For you to be able to pass the test, yeah.
I think so. So right now, CBC is trying to address that issue,
Mm-hmm.
and we want students to maybe have the skills, more of the skills of, okay, I can identify an element, the purpose of this element, rather than just regurgitating facts and
Stuff
numbers
from the textbook, yeah.
from the textbook. That's not, long term. It's not going to be beneficial in the long term. Now, compared
And I
to,
think,
yeah, go
and I
ahead.
think that's it could be personal, because honestly, anything like as an adult is when, like, I'm thinking about cells or biology or chemistry right now, is
Hmm.
when it's making sense, because
Right.
now I'm applying it to my life. Naskia,
Hmm.
oh, such and such, I'm smelling this and this because this and this reacted
Hmm.
somehow. And I'm like, okay, I remember this in chem, but then it never applied because, okay, I think it's also exposure. Like now, the weather, geography,
Hmm.
the seasons never made sense to me.
Right.
I only knew rainy season and a hot season. That
Uh-huh.
was it.
Uh-huh.
But then I was told there's winter, autumn, summer. That was foreign to me,
Right.
because I never lived in such a place. So it never,
Hmm.
me in Kotwa agitated just for the test, and then, but now moving to a different place, and now you're starting to understand. Oh, the earth is tilting a certain way. That's why.
Hmm.
Because my kid now is asking me, why is it snowing?
Hmm.
And now I have to explain. Now I have to go Google and say, oh, so the earth is tilted away from the sun.
Hmm.
Now we are facing this other side. That's why it's cold. Somewhere else is hot. But yeah, so now it's all like it's coming full circle. But
Hmm.
back then we were just fed, just to regurgitate. But then now after you're done with school, then you're like, oh, now it makes
Oh,
sense. Now it
yeah.
makes sense. Why? But then back then it never made sense. Which now I get it. But hopefully, yeah, hopefully it will address such things to where
Hmm.
you can even go to some other place and you're like, you see, now this is what we were talking in class. These are the seasons. Now going into a test, you're like, okay, I remember we went to a certain place and we saw snow, or we saw all these weather, or
Correct. Hmm.
yeah. So
No, no,
yeah,
and
so
a,
it's
a lot of teenagers actually, whenever I talk to my students, they always asked me that. Like, how is this relevant? Because I teach math, and
Mm-hmm.
how are polynomials relevant to me being a lawyer? You know,
Mm-hmm.
and so and it's, those questions are legitimate questions.
Mm-hmm.
Some kids do want to find value in what you're
Mm-hmm.
saying, and so
True.
as a teacher, you gotta find a way to, you know, let them know that I'm not doing this just for fun. There
Mm-hmm.
is some type of value
End
in it
goal.
and
Yeah.
goal in the long term. You might not see it in the short term, but in
Mm-hmm.
the long term, there is there is a goal. But just maybe comparing CBC with 844. I was actually a fan of 844.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
Partly
there's going to be some bias because you went through it. I went through, so there's some bias. But
that
yeah,
is true. That is
yeah.
true. I like the idea of a test. A test. I think was like eighth grade, standard eight, and
Mm-hmm.
there was a test
Or
in
the national
football.
test.
The
Yeah.
national test.
Mm-hmm.
CBC is getting rid of tests.
Hmm. So it's called competency based,
Uh-huh.
competency based curriculum. In your opinion, as a teacher, how do you get someone if someone is competent in something if you don't test their knowledge on it?
From my understanding, I think that
Mm-hmm.
the evaluation, or I can even use the word test, like you're gonna test the students
Mm-hmm.
on, there's gonna be some type of rubric, like let's say that the the curriculum is about measurements. It's a math topic, measurements. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe the test could be, can the student use a ruler? Can the student
Mm. Is a
measure,
protractor
use a
or
protractor?
like the
So,
tools?
so you don't have to give them a national test, but during class time, you as a teacher, you observe what the student is doing, and if they do
Mm-hmm.
meet that particular standard, you check off the list and say, yep, the student is
The
competent in this particular skill. So without the test. But I do have that question. I also have that doubt, young Toro,
mm,
because I don't know. I just feel like there's a role that tests play, and even in where I'm teaching right now in Colombia,
mm-hmm.
there is a national test that's given when you get to 12th grade, at the
Mm-hmm.
end of high school. There's a
Mm-hmm.
national test that determines, what you study at the university, that
Mm-hmm.
determines if you actually even enter university. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, there has to be something,
But yeah, there has to be a way for you to gauge, like, in the populace.
Mhm.
I mean, as much as we don't want to say, oh, there's rankings, but you have to be able to determine who can do what.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, like nationally. Okay, let's provide a test. And I remember we used to talk, like, we'll get into this, but I remember we used to talk about standardization
Mhm.
because being in the city, apparently our test will be marked different than if someone was from Garissa or somewhere, the very remote places, because they have less resources than we do.
Mhm.
So they probably know a little. I mean, I don't want to say know a little less, but the curriculum is the same, but
Mhm.
they don't have an expensive library like we did in the city.
Yes. Yes.
So the and 844 addressed that. We called it standardization. I don't know how true it is, but
Mhm.
yeah, they said there has to be a way for you to balance, like to have a way to say this should be the standard. Anyway, at least everyone in the school should be able to know XYZ, and we'll
Correct.
test you on it and see how competent you are on that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I don't know about America. America, I don't know if they have like a national test. Because I know they do SATs before they go
Mhm.
to college. So they
Mhm.
just test your knowledge in math and English and everything. And then there's a score. If
Mhm.
you above a certain score, yeah, they let you into college. So I don't think they have a national one, but
But those tests, they're optional, right? Like if you're
SATs.
planning
Oh
SATs,
yeah, yeah, yeah. If you want to
if you
go
want
to
to go,
college, yeah.
exactly. So my thinking is maybe with CBC,
Mm-hmm.
they're not going to test you. Maybe there might be a test if, let's say, you want to get into medicine. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe you might have to do like an entrance exam for
Into
into
yeah,
medicine. So
yeah,
maybe
pre-med or something. Yeah.
exactly. So maybe that's how they're gonna filter. And plus, I don't know, maybe on that website, the one that you pulled up, it's
Mm-hmm.
gonna also mention that when kids get to, I think it's middle school, they call it like junior high school or something like that. Kids are put on particular tracks. Like you go to a STEM track, people who want to pursue science,
Mm-hmm.
math careers, and then you're also going to have people who are going to pursue the arts, music, maybe psychology. So when you enter, I want to say eighth grade or ninth grade, whatever classes that you take will be preparing you
Mm-hmm.
for that particular career so
The
that you
field
don't
you're
have
going to be
somebody
going into.
studying.
Yeah.
Exactly. You don't want to study calculus, 2 years of calculus in high school, but you just do not
And they're
have
going into the arts.
the, yes, your heart tells you I want to get into the arts, but you're in a calculus class. um, I have my
True.
own personal opinion about that, but to me it seems like a good idea because we do have so many students who are locked into classes that they really do not, they don't
Need.
have the competency, and
Yeah.
we have to sort of weed them out. My fear is,
Mm-hmm.
naturally, in many countries across the world, STEM has very few students. Most people go into the arts. And so,
This is
um,
true. Yeah. They should, yeah, especially because I know there used to be this conversation of especially girls shying away from STEM.
yes,
Yeah, true. But yeah, yeah, education is man, and it's one of those things like because we can't choose it for kids.
hmm
So a kid has to, yeah, and most people just gravitate toward the arts. And I mean, people say, "Oh, it's easier." It's not as tougher as if I was
hmm
doing computer
hmm
science, if I did math or pure math, or
right, right,
so it's yeah, it's there's very few people that want to go into the hard fields, or even people who go into those fields just also drop out because they're like, ah man, this thing is not worth it. Let me,
and that's
or
the
they
danger.
yeah.
Yeah, you'll have some people who initially
Hmm.
wanted maybe to pursue the arts, and then they
Hmm.
realize this is too easy. I want to switch. It will be too late, or maybe vice versa. You feel like, hey, I feel like I've got the skills. I can
To
handle
do
math
STEM,
to do
yeah.
STEM.
And you go into STEM, you're like, hey, let me finish that arts degree and get a job, because now jobs, like, also I think the jobs, especially in America, I can only speak for America, they set students up for failure, honestly, because a job just wants you to have a bachelor's degree.
Uh-huh.
Then some of them will ask for years of experience, and how are you going to get experience if you don't get a job?
Mm-hmm.
So whatever field you study in, most people just end up not even using that degree. They go
Mm-hmm.
into another field. They just say, "Oh, I had a degree," and they'll go into something else. Never apply the degree. So to
Right.
them, and the argument, they say, well, college was just, it was to teach you how to think,
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily use your degree unless you're like
Correct.
a doctor or teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So if you did something else, economics, you don't have to be an economist. You
Correct.
can end up as an auditor or like
Mm-hmm.
any other field.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember, I there's this guy. He was working at Barclays and he went up the ranks. But I asked him, "What did you do in college?" He said, "I did bachelor." He was to be a teacher,
Mm-hmm.
but then he realized he can't teach. Teaching's not for
Mm-hmm.
him.
Mm-hmm.
Then he was like, he just did a master's, and then he went into management. So he went into into banking. So and I know there's many examples of those people who, especially in Kenya, where you're placed into a course you don't want.
Correct.
So that happens a lot. People just end up in fields they didn't want to, or they do a degree and they end up in the opposite side of what they studied for.
Yeah, and you know the I've been I'm guilty of being one of those people who push students into certain fields.
Fields.
You know, you brought up like, you know, girls don't usually pick STEM.
Yeah.
And I remember I had this one student back in Virginia. This girl was one of the best math students that I had. And I kept telling her, hey, look, you know, you applied, you got into a really good university, a university in Texas, and please pursue mathematics. And she told me, I'm sorry, once I'm done with high school,
Yeah.
I'm never going to take another math class again.
I'm done with math.
I'm done with math. And so I realized, well, one, I shouldn't have pushed her, but
Mm-hmm.
also people will choose what they like, what their heart loves. That's what they're going to pursue. So,
True.
you know, you could have that student, top A student in math or physics, but if they
They're
don't
not
have,
passionate about it.
they're not going to pursue it. They're not.
True.
So,
But it's yeah. Maybe because I can only view life in the lens that I saw life in.
mhm,
And growing up, I never knew what I wanted to do. I mean, I'll just say these impressive things. Oh, I want to be a heart surgeon, or I want to be a
mhm,
pilot. But I never really knew what I wanted to do. And the older I got, the more interested I was in STEM. The more interested I was in math. Like, yeah, seventh grade, eighth grade. That's when like things started clicking for me. Then I get into high school. Form
right,
one, okay, easy. Form two,
mhm,
now things are. Form three, now things are tough. And then from four, you're realizing, wow, I have to leave school with a good grade to make it to college. And then that's when you lock in again.
yeah,
So it was like a roller coaster ride,
mhm,
and I've seen it now in life too. It's like I just we most people. I mean, I dropped out because I mean family issues and all that. But yeah, I honestly started in a very my first major very easy. It was a breeze. I would not study, just read summaries, and I'd still pass. Then I'm like, man, I need I need to feel like I'm in college. So I took
right.
computer
Something
science.
challenging,
Yeah. Then computer science is challenging. Coding and I like the challenge, but then it's more expensive because it's a so I'm like, I can't do this. Let me go to a cheaper school.
right?
And so I hopped around a lot because I didn't exactly know what I wanted to do. And also I didn't have the funds so because I was financing my own education. So and it's I don't know. I don't know if other people struggle with that to where there's something they really want, but then they can't fund it and they have to take an alternative because man, I couldn't make it, or maybe I can't. I at the time I could not get a loan to
Mm-hmm.
even do what I want to do. So now you end up in a field, and you're like, man, this is the only thing I can do now. But I
Right.
feel like I have the potential to do so much the other things. So, but then yeah, that's being in one, and that's like how you're telling a student like you're really good at this, you should stick to it. Then they're like,
Mm-hmm.
dude, you only know half the story.
Right.
You
Right.
don't know what I'm struggling with. You don't know what I can do, what I can't do. But you as a teacher, you're like, man, your grades are showing you're
Yeah.
capable. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, your dilemma is a reflection of so many students. Even today, 2025, the
Hmm.
dilemma of I want to try this, I want to try this, or I want to pursue this, or I don't know what I want to pursue.
Hmm.
So many of my students, um, I want to say majority of them uh, don't know what they want to do in life,
True.
and that's okay. You know, they're still
Yeah.
young, they're still teenagers. They they have they still have time to make up their mind, but it's nice to know what what you're good at. At least that's what I try to tell them.
Hmm.
Identify what you're good at. Maybe
Yeah.
I'm good at math. I'm good, you know, numbers and analyzing trends, stuff like that, and then narrow down a few options.
Hmm.
But you don't want to have a student that, you know, that is interested in being a surgeon, but they can't spell, they can't read.
Yeah.
They don't enjoy reading because, if you're
Yeah.
gonna go into medicine, you
It's
have
a
to
lot of
read.
reading. It's a lot of reading. It's a
And
lot of reading, a lot of complicated nomenclature. It's yeah, you have to
exactly.
be on point with it. Yeah,
And plus
true.
the soft skills, you have to be somebody that is organized,
Hmm.
somebody that's maybe a good listener or
Yeah,
something,
personable. Yeah,
personable, because you got to listen to your patient. So there are
yeah.
so many other skills that I don't think a textbook is going to teach you
Teach you. Yeah.
about being a good listener. Maybe somebody can give you some pointers, but those are skills you have to develop. So it's a dilemma that, oh my God, you and many other people struggle with each year. It's not easy
Hmm.
figuring out what you want to do.
So the other I wanted to talk about. Okay, I'll bring up this podcast again. Anyway, by the way, once you guys you should listen to. There's a podcast called the Grits and Eggs podcast,
Hmm.
and this guy, the host Kyle, he talks about education a lot, and he says I mean, he's encouraging, especially because he came. I think he came from a poor background, and the cycle in the poor community, especially the black community in America, is most probably they grew up without a father in
Hmm.
the home.
Right.
So the only template they've seen is people going to jail or people getting into crime, and now he's even pushing people to say like, if you can't afford college, it's okay. Go into a trade school,
Right.
learn.
Yeah.
Because there's a video I saw. It's a guy. I think it's a guy in Florida. Had gold teeth. He had money in his hands, in a car, guns, and they were saying, "Young man, you grew up seeing a lot of distraction, and now you think that that's what you see. It's cool. It's okay to just destroy. But I will tell you, as someone who's been through the system, go build something. Wake up in the morning. Even take a screwdriver. Go unscrew your door hinge."
Right.
The hinges, unscrew it, take the whole thing off, put it back,
Put it back.
fix something. Go learn a trade, go be a carpenter, be able to fix the AC,
Uh-huh.
fix the engine in a car, something. Go use your hands. Instead of
Mm-hmm.
destroying, try to build.
Try to build
And
something.
I feel like, especially the Grits and Eds podcast now, what inspired me the most is this guy, he did a live show and they said, in prison they listen, there's a prison where they play episodes every week. They play his podcast episodes because he's always inspiring people to just try to be better than what we have been in the community.
Mm-hmm.
If you're saying, oh, you can't make it to college, that's okay. Go learn a trade,
Mm-hmm.
go buy a truck, just walk with your hands to where, because he said we have enough scammers already. We have enough thieves, we have enough conmen. How about we get people who can actually build a community?
Right.
If we someone who can build a house, someone who
Mm-hmm.
can. So then, and he's encouraging them to say like, not everyone will go to corporate. Corporate is not for everybody. The corporate game, and
That is
I'm in
true.
corporate, and I'm now feeling the weight, and I'm like, man, I don't know how many more years I have in corporate because I need to learn a trade too. So and he encourages people to, yeah, learn a trade, and I don't think he's
Mm-hmm.
pushing any agenda or he's pushing for. He's just saying like, have something, even
Right.
if your life goes bad, your
Mm-hmm.
job is gone. You can be like, you know what, I can fix something, and you can pay me for it. I'm like, okay, you can survive on that.
No, that's amazing advice. That's really,
Yeah,
really good advice
yeah.
because
He said it's called knowledge. He always dropping knowledge. It's funny. But
you
yeah, Grit and Air podcast everywhere. It's available everywhere. Very, very inspiring.
no, that
What
that is
he's
true.
doing.
A lot of people, a lot of young people, let me say minors, anybody under 18,
Hmm.
they want to live that lifestyle, that Instagram lifestyle.
Hmm.
Um,
Fast money.
fast money, no effort. I want to go on trips, and they forget about the work you have to put in to
Hmm.
actually live that lifestyle. And some of those people on Instagram, there's a dude who builds houses in Virginia,
Hmm.
uh, and he shared his life story. Before he owned a Ferrari, he was driving the most beat up car in
A
America.
bucket,
Bucket.
a Toyota Camry or something.
It was falling apart. But man, the dude just, kept his head down, grinding every day until he got to where he's now flying private. He owns, luxury cars, and through sweat, a lot of sacrifice, and that's, I think, the podcast that you mentioned.
Yeah, the
That's really
Grits
the
and
thing.
Airs podcast, by the way, check it out. It'll change your life.
I think that's a message that a lot of young people need to hear. Like, you don't have to be the next Facebook founder, a billionaire. Go out there, get a life skill and build something. Maybe that's where you're gonna find happiness, and
True.
and focus on that and make the best out of it. But don't look at your buddy who went to I don't know, Harvard,
Or
and then
Yale.
is
They were
or
lucky
Yale.
enough to, yeah. Because, but there's this pressure. Let me say, Peter, sorry to cut you off.
Mhm.
I used to go to church with this guy. And when I came to America after everything, I had a family, blah, blah, blah. We bumped into each other. He's like, oh, I went to MIT. I'm like, what? That was my dream. I dreamt one day I would like to go do computer science in an institution like MIT.
Mhm.
But here's a guy who's living the life I wanted. But I don't know if he's happy. I know
Mhm.
I'm happy for him. I'm like, good for you, dude. You
Mhm.
made it. Like, at least one of us from where we came from achieved that.
Mhm.
And I'm happy for him. But I never measured his success with mine.
Mhm.
Because I
Mhm.
was like, I wasn't able to make it to where that was my dream, but you're
Mhm.
living it. I'm like, congrats to you. But
Right.
then I'm just happy that this is the guy I went to church with. This is a
Mhm.
guy I knew. This is a guy I interacted with.
Mhm.
This is a guy I never even thought like, like there's those guys who are like, oh, only choppy, they're
Mhm.
smart, but
Mhm.
this is a guy he had a full ride scholarship.
Mhm.
He achieved something I couldn't achieve. So I'm happy for him. And
Absolutely.
I'm not, and I won't gauge my success with his, because my success is, man, I can pay my rent. This personal success story today, I paid off my car. And it's not as glamorous as going to MIT or making an app but it's the small, small things. That's my success. My success is I'm now debt free. Me,
Uh-huh.
that to me, I'm winning. But this guy is
Absolutely.
doing big things. He's probably going to be somewhere in corporate and forget about me. But I remember your interaction, yeah. Dude, you went to MIT. I was like, oh yeah, here's my graduation in it. I'm like, man, I really wanted that. And you have it, man, I'm happy for you.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I think when we stop gauging our successes, that's where it is. Like, measure your own success to your own level. Use the other people's motivation, but
Exactly.
don't. Yeah. So, but yeah. Anyway, sorry to cut you off. I had to. I just remembered, man. I know someone who went to MIT also.
Uh-huh.
So,
No, exactly. No, that's exactly where I was going with what I was saying about, somebody went to MIT, went to Yale. Now they're working for a hedge fund company
somewhere, yeah.
somewhere in New York, and then we measure our success to their success, and then we feel like we did
We
something
come
wrong.
short. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not true. And actually, this is something, maybe sort of a segue into something I wanted to talk to you about, is sort of um, some of the challenges in education right now facing a lot of students, and it has to do with mental health, because there's a lot of pressure, like, aside from pressure from your parents, to do well in school, but there's also, like, social media pressure that a lot of kids have to deal with. So they get on Instagram or TikTok, and they feel like, I'm not good enough. And the one of those challenges is, how do we give kids the tools to feel self-confident in a world that is presenting itself as a glamorous world. Everything is easy. You don't need to work. You just sit on a computer. And so that there is a real challenge when it comes to mental health. I was looking at the trends in levels of anxiety. Um, the levels of anxiety amongst people who are 50 years of age plus has stayed kind of relatively the same over the years.
So it's, yeah, it's consistent.
It's been consistent. The baby boomers, their level of anxiety are about the same. People in their 40s, 30s, but since 20, I think it was 2012, I was looking at the chart. Since 2012, the anxiety level for teenagers has more than
Spiked.
doubled. It has spiked massively. And
And this
part
is
of
because they're comparing their lives to
mhm,
each other.
comparing their lives to each other, social media, cell phones. Actually, there's a clinical psychologist. He he put that one of the reasons is the introduction of cell phones at an early age to kids. So kids, they look at the cell phone and the world that is virtual and think that that's the real world. Like you and I, we grew up without cell phones.
Oh,
The only way that I could know you were successful, or maybe you and I have to interact face to face, that's how we saw the world, face to face.
right.
But for a lot of kids, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook,
That's the
YouTube,
real world to
that's
them.
the real world to them. And
Mm.
those videos are edited. That makeup, Snapchat, those are filters. And
Yeah.
so it has
Oh, yeah. Because
mhm,
someone said, yeah, oh, people only share their happy moments.
exactly.
No one shares the sad moments. No one shares when their car is being towed or their car
Hmm.
is being repossessed. No one shares when they're breaking down. Well,
Hmm.
now we've seen people crying, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, we saw real emotions. We saw
Hmm.
death. We saw, so we had a balance of everything. I saw thieves being banned. I've
Hmm.
seen, so there's a certain reality of life where I know, okay, I've seen in real life I will not talk to someone like that because I'll
Hmm.
get punched in the face.
Hmm.
But yeah, these kids now, this is the real world to them. There's no consequence. They
Hmm.
can say anything with no consequence, and they
Hmm.
feel invincible of some sort. So yeah, I agree.
The
Social media,
being behind a keyboard or like being behind a podcast, I could say all
yeah,
the crap I want and I'm
yeah,
anonymous
yeah,
and there's no consequence. And
yeah.
so
Because no one can get to me. Yeah,
nobody can get to me. You can get away with it, but
yeah.
you cannot pull that off in the real world. And so that disconnect for a lot of teenagers, especially teenagers, maybe not so much kids that are maybe younger than 10 years of age or 8, but teenagers, they're in that phase of their life where they're sort of developing a character, they're developing who they want to be later on in life. And so
Persona.
their persona. And so social media is fueling this anxiety where they apply what they saw online into the real world, but they don't see the results. They want that fast life, but it's not coming fast enough. I mean, that rich life, that it's not coming fast enough. They want that attention from boys, or maybe boys want that attention from girls.
Yeah,
They want to be like maybe Andrew Tate or something like that, but it's not happening. And
right.
then they start to break down. So there's a real crisis that is slowly brewing, and I think parents, teachers, that we need to get a hold of how young people have access to technology,
Technology
controlling that. We had a conversation about that. Like, how do you control your child's access to how long do they stay on the
on a
internet,
device.
on a
Yeah.
device?
Or even expectations. They're like, oh, I saw this child is getting these gifts. Can I get? I'm like, you earn gifts. You don't just get gifts. So why should I buy you that? Well, I saw this on there. I'm like, that's not a reason. If you give me a valid reason why you want that
Right,
doll or why you think you've earned that, I'll get it for you. But until you can explain that, or you just want it because you saw it, sweetie, it doesn't. Nothing in the world comes like that just because you want it. You work for stuff. So yeah,
right.
So, and that I was going to ask you, yeah, when I think you already mentioned it. So, do you think it's a role of, because I think, and being a parent has made me think of this. There's no way I'll assign, if I'm not putting the effort at home with my child, they're not going to perform at school.
No.
Because the teacher can't work miracles.
Mm-mm.
Teacher's there for guidance. Then they come home. Oh, we studied this and this and this. I'm like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
you studied this? Okay. Can we look at it? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what you think. They're like, well, the teacher said this and this and this and this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, that's what the teacher said. What do you think?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think this and this. So that's how, and I think, I mean, I'm yet to see any results, but that's how I approached it, at least. I approach it as if as the teacher just introduced a concept
Right.
and it's up to you to build on it with the child. So as a
Exactly.
parent, you have to be actively
Mm-hmm.
very, very present, especially education wise. You have to be like very hands on. You can't just be
Mm-hmm.
hands off and say, oh, that's the work of the teacher.
I
Because the
agree.
days that they have snow days,
COVID.
man, man, I'm a full time teacher. I'm cooking, I'm doing everything, and then I'm still, okay, where are we on these numbers? Okay, so let's write some numbers here. Let's write some letters. Let's spell your name,
Uh-huh.
stuff like that. And I think it's helped to where at least my kid is
Uh-huh.
interested in education because she knows if I go
Mm-hmm.
to school, I'm learning. If I come home,
Uh-huh.
my dad is gonna quiz me on this, so I
Yeah.
have to know this and this and this and that. So
No, that consistency is key. That
yeah,
consistency, knowing that someone's going to hold me accountable,
yeah,
is key in at least at the developmental age. Once
yeah.
she's like, your daughter is a little bit older, maybe hopefully
She'll
16,
be self
17,
motivated.
she'll be
Yeah,
self-motivated. You
yeah,
don't want to hand hold her all the
all the
way
way. Yeah,
into adulthood, but at that young age, it has to sort of be drilled into her mind, like somebody's going
this
to
is an
hold you.
expectation. Yeah,
Hmm. So,
you're
so
expected to
that's
do X, Y, Z. Yeah.
no, that's definitely important. There's an important um, uh, way of thinking back in the day
Mm-hmm.
that used to say education begins at home. Education does
Mm.
not begin in school. So when the child comes to school, they already have a set of values that you have already sort of
Instilled in them.
instilled
Yeah.
in them. So, when they come to school, all I'm going to do is try to teach them how to use those skills in a social setting. Because at home,
Mm.
it's just you and your child,
Right.
you and your 2 kids or 3 kids, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
But in school, that's a different environment. Plus, mom and dad are not there. So
Mm-hmm.
when they come to school, we just sort of like supplement already the
What's been
values.
built, yeah, is been, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
it's like whatever it's in the cup, now we just add on to it. Whatever is in there.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Man, what a good conversation, Peter. I don't know. I think we've tackled everything because we've looked at the different nini, even without looking at the point. Like we've just, and now we even talked about the challenges. So
Yeah.
yeah, the current generation, God help us all. But I mean, I'm yet to see because
Yeah.
and I think it's the same way. The way I'm thinking, I don't know if my parents were thinking the same way,
Hmm.
to where they were like, let's see how these kids turn out.
Right.
I mean, I now I give them grace. I say they
Hmm.
tried the hardest what they had.
Exactly.
I think we know more, and I mean, at least I know a little more now than they did, and that's why I try to impart that to. And maybe at some point I'll feel like maybe I wasn't doing it, or maybe I feel like I'm not doing enough. But
Hmm.
I mean, I feel like most parents do their best. They try to at least do their best with
That
their
is true.
kids. Yeah. So
That is true. I mean, that's how I approach whenever I meet parents. I never meet a parent and say, "You're a horrible parent." I know
yeah, you're
every
not
single
doing anything.
I
Yeah.
know they're trying their best. Parenting doesn't come with a manual. Like,
Yeah.
oh, in this situation, you do this
This is
and you
what
do
you do.
this. This is no.
It's
Sometimes
figuring it out as you go.
exactly, and you sort of adapt to your child because I'm sure what works for you and your
Hmm.
child possibly wouldn't have worked for your
For any
parents and
other.
you.
True.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you just try your best, and yeah.
But yeah. But all in all, to summarize, you think education is important, right? So people who think, oh, you can just live without it, and some form of being informed is good, don't you think?
No, absolutely. Some level of knowing what's going on in the world, a little bit of hands-on skills. You know, don't depend on the internet. Try to
There's no downside. There's no
there's no,
downside of going to school
exactly. There's no
other than
downside.
getting into loans.
Maybe not. Maybe I wouldn't say like definitely everybody has to go to university. I do agree with you. Something you mentioned about going to like a trade school. I think a lot more people should consider trade school.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's cheaper, the course is shorter. So if your attention span is very low, you at least will pay attention to this. And it's something you'll have to go apply. So you have to pay attention.
absolutely, absolutely.
But yeah, yeah, I'm thinking also of enrolling into a trade school, get some certifications because, who knows? I might need my own to do my own plumbing on the day I call a plumber and they don't show up. But yeah, Peter, appreciate making time. I definitely enjoyed me talking about education. I can talk about this every day, all day. And hopefully, will you come back on again and we can, dive even a little deeper and go into maybe student loans and stuff like that. Stuff like this. I think we
Scholarships.
just did
Yeah,
a we did like an overview. We can like do like a proper deep dive into the actual issues affecting education.
absolutely.
But yeah,
No, I
any
enjoyed it.
any words to to close it up before we?
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. I know anybody out there who's listening that has a sibling or they're considering being a teacher, do it. Do it. It's one of those thankless jobs. Teachers don't do it for the money. They
For the
do it
money,
because
yeah.
they're passionate about it. If you're a parent out there, you're listening. Have high expectations for your child. Keep them realistic, but have high expectations. The rewards of parenting and teaching might not be seen immediately. It's one of those things you're possibly going to see the rewards in like 10 years or 5 years when your child comes back home. It's like, hey, I got a job somewhere. Hey, I'm paying my own bills. And then you'll realize, oh, yeah, those sleepless nights that I was
They're
up
worth it.
doing homework, they are worth it. So keep doing what
Yeah,
you're doing as a parent, as a teacher, and everything will fall into place. But I enjoyed the conversation.
yeah, yeah. Appreciate it, Pete. I actually even have a colleague who's quitting very soon and going into teaching.
Nice.
Yeah, he's taking a pay, but I mean, he would definitely make less. But he was
Yes.
like, man,
Yeah.
I'd rather go like influence and like just trying to build on the next generation than be in corporate and try to climb this ladder. He's like, I'm done. I'm done. I'm going into teaching. I was like, hey, man.
Nice. Happy to hear
Yeah.
that.
So,
That's
so yeah,
great.
I'm surrounded by, yeah, I have at least I could say I have a friend who's
Uh-huh.
going into teaching. I have an uncle who's a teacher.
Hmm.
I have Peter Muhaya, who's a friend, who's a teacher. But yeah, I appreciate making the time. I think this one, I'll post it right now. I'm just going to, you see, this is how I do it. One takes,
Okay.
we're done, done deal. But anyway, anyone who wants to also be a guest, please, you're welcome. But anyway, Peter, thank you for making time. Thank you for making time out of your busy schedule. Uh, but yeah, we should definitely do this again. I've enjoyed
Absolutely.
it. Yeah, talking serious things. Sign me up. But anyway,
Absolutely. Absolutely. I
but yeah,
enjoyed
I'll
it.
let you go. You have a good one, sir. Have a good weekend. Me, I have to go to work now, so I have to go
Sayang,
cook.
Toro. Thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks again.
climb this corporate ladder. Anyway, Peter, it's been real. Appreciate you, man.
All right. Later.
Yeah.
Changanya maji, maharagwe na mahindi, rusha yote kwa moto na uchemshe kamili. Githeri toa alafu unyunyuzie kachumbi, kisha sunda kwa jua la ndivyo isipatane nayo vumbi. Skiza GMPs, Githeri Media Podcast. GMPs, Young Toro on a broadcast. GMPs, Githeri Media Podcast. GMPs, Young Toro on a broadcast. Hey, every laugh. Skiza, Githeri Media Podcast. Skiza, coming live to your speakers. Skiza, Young Toro eye picker. Skizza.